Does it feel like almost everything with your child becomes a battle? Simple requests turn into huge arguments. Rules become negotiations. Correction becomes explosive emotional disruption. And over time, you become to feel like there's nothing you can do. You're frustrated, you're upset, and you feel stuck, unable to change your child's behavior. Today, on the Inner Framework, we're going to cover oppositional defiant disorder, what it is, how it's defined, what therapy would look like, and techniques and skills you can use to help control your child's behavior. Oppositional defiant disorder is a condition that is frequently diagnosed in children around the ages of 5 or 6, or normally when they start to head off into preschool or kindergarten, because that's when it's normally noticed. It involves a persistent pattern of defiance, irritability, emotional dysregulation, and talking back to adults when asked to do simple tasks. Oftentimes, this looks like a power struggle between the parent and the child, and that's really what it is. Children are obviously going to fight back on occasion to their parents. They'll be defiant and they'll be rebellious. But in this case, it's not just a simple behavior that we're talking about. This is something that has become frequent, irrational, and is over the limit of any normal child would have. What I mean by this is it's causing the child to have distress at home, at school, and with their friendships. This can happen at home, between brothers and sisters, between brothers and brothers, between sisters and sisters, although it is more common in boys than it is in girls. It is also, girls can also have oppositional defiant disorder as well. Your child may also refuse to clean their room, take out their trash, put their clothes in the laundry basket, or put their shoes where they're supposed to go. They refuse to take a shower. They refuse to brush their teeth. They refuse to eat their food. They refuse to take care of their pet. There's a multitude of things that these kids with oppositional defiant disorder can struggle with. And here's where the power struggle comes in. The parents, over time, get wore down by their child's behavior. It's consistent. It happens all the time. They're always fighting. They're always talking back. They're always not doing the chore or the task that the parent wants them to do. And this isn't really supposed to be necessarily like a controlling type of thing, like I'm controlling my kid, but my kid won't do the basic everyday things they're supposed to do. So, what do? Parents often get tired and they fall off of their consistency, and consistency begins to drop, and as consistency begins to drop, the child over a period of time begins to learn that as long as I can wear my parent out, then I can get them to do, or them allow me to do, what it is I want to do. Emotional dysregulation is also part of oppositional defiant disorder. Most important part about understanding this is that kids are not always making a conscious decision to be defiant. Lots of times, they're doing the defiant behaviors are showing up because they're struggling with a sympathetic nervous system that may very well be stuck in survival mode. If you would like more information on that topic, please check out my last video. Most theorists struggle to identify where oppositional defiant disorder is coming from, but most of them will agree that it's not a neurological disorder, such as autism or ADHD, and it is more likely developed over time in the environment that the brain is developed in. This means that oppositional defiant disorder is often resulting from a power struggle for a couple of different reasons. First is the developmental theory. With this theory, theorists would conclude that the defiant behaviors are coming from inappropriate developmental stages, such as Erickson's developmental stages, and that if the child is struggling through one of these developmental stages, it can cause frustration and anger, which is resulting in what we see oppositional defiant disorder. This can come from attachment patterns with adults, with their primary caregivers. This can come from insecure attachment patterns, such as mothers who are inattentive or have some sort of an addiction or their own emotional or mental health problems that they're dealing with. All of these factors can play a role in how the child is developing or how their developmental processes are being played out in their environment. Second, theorists would agree that this may be a learning problem. What I mean by that is they have learned this type of behavior. And as we begin to break this down, some kids may begin to realize that the only attention they get is when they have negative behaviors. And so actually what's happening in this situation is these negative behaviors are causing positive feedback loops within the child, which causes that behavior to become more and more prevalent in their daily activities. For example, if there is a mother or a caregiver that is struggling to pay attention to the child because maybe they have a newborn, or they have a job to take care of, or they have some addiction. There's all kinds of things that could be causing this. But the problem is they're not paying the child any attention. They're not playing with them. They're not acknowledging their emotions. They're not helping them to co-regulate. And what ends up happening is the child begins to learn that any negative behavior results in mom coming in, paying attention to me. And that means if mom pays attention to me, that she loves me. In all reality, kids don't do what's ethical, they do what gets results. And in this situation, what gets results are the bad behaviors. So in this instance, we have to start to reverse what the child is learning and put the rewards in the appropriate places. This can be done by a multitude of things that we'll go over a little later in the video. The one good thing about this information is that if ODD is not something that we're born with, then this means that this is something that we can unlearn. We can teach the child new behaviors and new expectations, and this can cause the behaviors that we call negative to begin to go away. The talking back, the defiance, the not minding, the extreme emotional outbursts when they don't get their way, temper tantrums we would call them. All of these things can be unlearned. Next, I would really like to talk about how ADHD and ODD are pretty commonly what we call comorbid, or they occur together. Now, in this instance, ADHD is a neurodevelopmental problem. What I mean by that is kids who are diagnosed with or are suffering from symptoms of ADHD have what we would consider slowed or underdeveloped executive functioning skills. These skills are the result of the prefrontal cortex. The problem with this comes is when, because it is a neurodevelopmental problem, a neurocognitive issue, then the child and the mother or the father, one or the two or both, will oftentimes have ADHD as well. So they're often inattentive, hyper-focused, they have problems with executive functioning skills, they're impulsive, and what happens is the child who also now has ADHD and the adult who has ADHD come into conflict with one another. They fight with one another. And when they're fighting, the child will come up, the child will engage, the parent will then engage back, and then what happens is there's an emotional dysregulation pattern between both mother, father, and the child. This causes a power struggle that needs to be resolved in order for the oppositional defiant disorder or the behaviors to be corrected. The reason this needs to be corrected is because the parent or the caregiver needs to be able to connect with the child in an emotional way so that they can help them to co-regulate one another. Parent and child work in an ecosystem together with one another. If the mother is very anxious and very irritable and very frustrated and very inattentive and all of these things, then what happens is the child doesn't learn how to effectively regulate their anxiety, their frustration, their anger, and then they wind up coming into conflict with the adults. And this is where ODD comes from. In other words, you cannot regulate a dysregulated child unless you are able to regulate your own emotions effectively as an adult or a parent. This is why it's so important that when you have a child with ODD, you're able to seek help for these problems, and we'll go over those as well. If these problems are not corrected, it can lead to a multitude of disruptions throughout the child's life. It can cause problems at school. It can cause problems with their friends. It can cause problems with their siblings. It can cause all kinds of problems to begin to happen. And if ODD is not taken care of, it can cause anxiety disorders, mood disorders, can cause other situations like elevated up from ODD would be conduct disorder. Now we're talking about the child is beginning to break into places. They're attacking people with weapons. They're stealing things from others. They're beginning to escalate the ODD behaviors, and we want to make sure that those don't get to that point. Next, I want to talk about how oppositional defiant disorder is diagnosed. Diagnosis for ODD is typically going to need to be made by a mental health professional who is licensed or who has the ability to be licensed in the state where you live. And I would just pick up the phone, call them, and tell them what's going on, and they would be happy to get you in. Also, when we're thinking about treatment for ODD, parents specifically need to know that there may be some of this that they need to change on their own. It's not just the child acting out of a behavior that will change unless the parent or the guardian makes some changes themselves. This can be hard for parents to understand or to consider when first coming into therapy. As I start to treat individuals with oppositional defiant disorder, I work with the parent just as much as I do with the child. And early screening and early intervention is important in this because as they get older, these behaviors begin to get entrenched into their life and can be very hard to change by the time they turn, let's say, 13, 14, 15 and become a teenager. These behaviors can become very, very tough to treat. Early intervention is a positive on every one of the kids I've ever worked with that have ODD. Now, we're going to go over and cover the steps that you're going to need to go through, both at home and with a therapist, to help control this behavior. Number one, the first thing you must do is remove the power struggle. If the child comes to you emotionally charged and you come back at them emotionally charged, there's no learning that's ever going to happen. The child is just going to continue to be emotionally dysregulated. You're going to continue to be emotionally dysregulated, and the behaviors are never going to change. First thing you need to do is take the power out of the struggle. You cannot win by force or brute force with a child. They will almost always win somehow in the long run, because what you're doing is you're engaging this behavior with your with your own emotional dysregulation, and what this does is this just fuels the fire. So we have to get that under control as quickly as possible. Second thing is being calm and being consistent. The child needs to understand that they have some control over their life and that they are making the decision to behave in whatever way they're behaving. And you can come at them in a calm and constructive manner that does not engage the emotional response and is able to help them know that they're safe and that they're not, and it doesn't trigger or inflame that sympathetic nervous system that causes them to go into fight or flight. Third, you need short, clear directives. What do I mean by this? When we're trying to help a kid to change their behaviors, the first thing we're going to want to do is make short lists. Why is this important? The command to say clean room consists of a multitude of different routines that have to be completed. Make your bed, put your shoes in the right place, put your clothes in the laundry basket, put the towels in their appropriate places, put your toys in the toy box. This is a multiple routine that has to be completed. So we need to be very, very short and very directive. Make your bed, put your shoes away, put your clothes in the drawers. These types of requests are going to come across much better, and they are very directive, and they know exactly what it is that they need to do. Number 4, connection over correction. What do I mean by this? Children need to be played with. Play with your child. Engage with your child. Be interested in what they're doing. Be interested in the things that they're interested in, and show them attention and show them that you're there for them emotionally and that you're there to play with them and do the things that maybe that nobody else will do for them. Connection over correction. Connect with your child on a very emotional level, and you'll see a big change in their behaviors. Fifth, reinforce positive behaviors. This is best done through reward charts, token economies, things of that nature. You would have a list on the wall, a bulletin board, Amazon, all kinds of different places, probably Walmart have these. And what you would do is you would list out the things that they need to do. As they do them, you would put stars on them for each of the days, and then the child would know the reward that they're going to get for completing those tasks. That way the child has control over their behavior, and it's not something that they're directed but to do by the adult. That removes the power struggle, and it gives the reward or the incentive back onto the child to do what's right. And then again, consistency between caregivers. If we have broken families with multiple families, a mother and a father, there needs to be a lot of consistency within that system. The mother needs to be able to communicate well with the father needs to be able to communicate well with the mother, so that there's consistency at both households, so that these things don't fall through the crack and there's inconsistent rewards and punishments for the things that these children are doing at their different households. Finally, if your child starts to become aggressive, becomes using weapons, attacking people, attacking animals, doing things to harm themselves, cutting themselves, any type of behavior like this, please reach out to a medical or a healthcare professional immediately. Call 988 or your local 911. This is something that can turn into a very severe issue, and these emotional dysregulational problems don't get better overnight. They don't just go away. Things have to change, and you need a coach or you need a therapist or somebody to help guide you through this process so that you can get the best results possible for your child. And then when we talk about treatment options, we're looking at CBT, play therapy, PCIT, biofeedback, neurofeedback. There's a whole group of therapies that may be appropriate for you and your child. Speak to a therapist and a professional to see what's all right, which one would be right for you. I'd like to thank you for joining in with me today. If you have been able to gather some information that will help you with your child and your child's behavior, I would please encourage you to hit that like and subscribe button. This is what makes it where I can continue to make this content And if you have any questions, please leave those in the comment section below. I will do my best to respond to you as fast as I see it. Again, I work as a therapist, and I work in an outpatient clinic, and I try to do these things if I have cancellations or what have you. But please, if you have any questions or comments, leave those in the comment section below, and we'll catch you on the next one. Y'all have a good day.